Hello, Pete Knight here. Welcome to another episode of Breaking Your Gear. So, I have been sent some more Maillons. Now I hear you go, oh, you've just done a video about Maillons. I have, but these are different. So these ones are notched as opposed to corroded. Well, they're a bit corroded as well. But they are different, and we're going to test them slightly differently. More on that in a moment. So people are sending me stuff that has come from their personal collection or they found out in the wild, and I'm going to break it for them. So this week's entry comes from Tarquin. So these Maillons were taken out of a cave in South Wales, Pwll Dwfn. Apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation there. And these are on some fixed ropes. They've been in the cave since at least 2011, so they've done some pretty good time in there. They were on a mix of alloy and steel hanger plates, and as they've moved over time, they've developed a little notch kind of corresponding with where it sat on the hanger. So Tarquin was interested to see if the notch will affect the strength, but he requested that if we were going to break them, we should do so by actually pulling them on a hanger plate. So I've had to do a little bit of modification to the pull tester, got a big bit of steel angle, and have bolted a big fat hanger plate to it so that we can actually pull these on one end through a hanger, with the other end attached to the standard 10mm chain link. So I'll be able to go through the three different Maillons that Tarquin has sent in, but we'll also pull a couple of reference samples as well. So these are slightly surface corroded, but otherwise, pretty damn good condition, so we can get a bit of an idea of what the strength drop is. I'll do one of the reference samples just pulling 10mm chain to 10mm chain. I'll do the other one via the hanger plate and 10mm chain, and then we'll do the three samples from the cave via the hanger plate and the chain link as well. Anyway, so we'll have a quick look at these just so you can see in close up. So I've taken some macro shots. So the reference ones, this is one of the reference ones. This is the other reference ones. They are sold as 7mm pattern long Maillons with a minimum breaking strength of 25 kilonewtons on their major axis. As you can see with the calipers there, they're only just a touch under that. That may well have come out of the factory at that level. I'm not sure exactly what the tolerance is on the 7mm bar, but that looks pretty close to new to me. I have kind of marked up Tarquin samples in order of what I think is increasing kind of wear on them. So the first one, sample number 1 here, so it's got a notch at one end and no notching at the other. Now it's a little bit crusty with rust, but there's nothing like super deep and structural here. The worst of the damage is definitely within that notch. So the calipers measure that notch at 5.19mm. So remember, these are down from 7mm on there. So there's a couple of mil lost at the narrowest point on that. So number 2, again, bit crusty here. Gates still work on all these, by the way. Doesn't actually visually look quite as bad as number 1, but when measured with the calipers, this comes in at just under 5mm, so 4.97mm on the calipers there. Again, the opposite end doesn't really display any kind of notching, so it's clearly sat with one end on the hanger plate for all the time it's been underground. And then the third one, number 3, so yeah, this one's definitely got the most significant notch compared to any of them here. So when I measured this one, it came in at 4.05mm, so basically 4mm, where it should be 7 on the round bar at that point. So there's quite a lot of metal lost there, so that will be interesting. So when we pull these on hanger plates, the theory is, what Tarquin basically wants to find out is, will that narrower diameter, that 3 or 4mm edge radius of the hanger plate, lead to a significant change in the braking strength versus when they're pulled kind of as standard in the test with a 12mm pin, or with a 10mm rope or carabiner or something like that on it. So I suspect the smaller radius of the bend will actually affect the strength. Obviously I haven't got a huge number of test samples here, so this isn't particularly scientific, but it'll be interesting to look at anyway. So I'm going to break one of the reference samples first. Going to do that as per normal, as in my 10mm chain link, 10mm chain link, just pull it, break it, we'll get a reference strength on that. I'll then reload the machine with the hanger plate adapter and we'll pull the other reference sample. So that will give us two numbers, the figure for breaking a Maillon between two 10mm chains, and the figure for breaking a Maillon between 10mm chain and the hanger plate. And then we can have a quick look at the percentage strength drop there, and then we will go on to break the 3 samples that Tarquin has sent in, and then we can have a little look at kind of how much weaker they are versus those baseline reference samples. Anyway, so I'm going to set up the test rig and switch cameras, and here we go. Okay, so here's our first sample. So this was not one of Tarquin's Maillons, this is just a rusty one I've grabbed out the shed that was pretty much still 7mm diameter, and we're going to pull it between the two 10mm chain links to give ourselves a reference force. So here we go. So that was 35.05 kilonewtons there. It's just a hair over 35 kN, which just happens to be basically 10 kilonewtons stronger than it was marked up to be. Yeah, and that's not going to come off the chain link. Right, broke at the bearing point, which is what you'd expect. The metal thins as it stretches until eventually it completely breaks. Okay, so reference sample 2 is all loaded up now. You can see it's attached directly to a hanger plate. That's a 12mm 316 stainless steel Pwll hanger plate there, unused, just peeled the price sticker off it. Poor thing, that's not how you expected to spend your life, is it? Yep, so let's see how this compares to the other reference one. So in an unscientific sample test of 1 using each variable, we have a difference of approximately, not far off 10 kilonewtons. So this one broke at 25.81 kilonewtons. Stretched in the direction of load as you'd expect, and broke at the hanger plate end, so much smaller notch on this one. Actually looks like I stand a chance of getting this off the chain link as well. So I've loaded up sample 1 from the Pwll Dwfn Maillons here. I've orientated the Maillon so that the notch, the wear groove it had, sits perfectly with the hanger plate, essentially exactly how it would have been in the cave. So I guess we're pulling it on the thinnest place in the orientation where it's naturally going to want to settle. So the reference sample, the unnotched one that we broke, was around 25 kilonewtons, 25.8 to be precise. So we will see what effect that notch has on the strength of this one. Okay, here we go. Okay then, place your bets. Alright, as expected, it is stretched and broken at the bearing point on the hanger plate. Once again, the hanger plate has come off far better. That was definitely showing a bit of distortion here. So we have a force required to break there of 23.6 kilonewtons. So remember the reference sample is 25.8. and this one is 23.6. So we've got notch Maillon number 2 loaded in. Again, we've orientated it so that it sits perfectly within the notch on the hanger plate as it would have been sat in the cave. Checked everything over, nothing's in the rig or the hanger plate looks in any way like it's about to fail, so we will carry on with the same hanger. And here we go. Alright, now this one reached 25.72 kilonewtons. Again, broke on the hanger plate end. Again, the hanger plate slightly deformed, but definitely doesn't show any significant damage. I'll definitely survive another test. And finally, here is Maillon number 3, locked and loaded. So this was the Maillon with the biggest or deepest wear groove on it. So when we measured this with the calipers, it came in at just a fraction over 4mm, down from the 7mm nominal diameter for this type of Maillon. So we've lost 3mm of steel there. So let's get this one pulled and see what it does. Okay, and if you're on the internet guessing the amount of force, get your guesses in now. So this one broke at 22.3 kilonewtons, so it is definitely the weakest of the 3 samples. Back together so you can see. So pulled, yeah, bang on in the notch there. Hanger plate, I mean, that's the real hero. That's I mean, I can keep using that one on the test bed for a lot longer now, so that's handy. That wasn't as expensive a test as I was expecting there. But yeah, this one, even with the loss of metal, 3mm deep notch, leaving only 4mm of metal, we've got 22.3 kilonewtons out of that. And there we have it then. So at some point I'm going to have to come to terms with the fact that this series of videos just seems to be showing people that it's okay to use some really knackered kit, because there's still a safety margin there. So I'm just going to again throw my usual disclaimer in, and like, that was these tests on these Maillons, and underground or face to face with this kind of stuff, you genuinely have no idea how bad it's actually going to be. So yeah, take this with a pinch of salt. This is indicative of the strength of these samples, not every sample in a similar state. Anyway, so reference one, so the undamaged one, we pulled that on a 10mm chain and that gave us 35 kilonewtons. We then pulled a near-on identical reference sample on the Pwll hanger plate and that gave us a breaking strain of 25.8 kilonewtons, so loss of 9.2 kilonewtons there. So that's quite a change actually. It's nearly a ton loss just going from the 10mm radius to the, I think it's 3.5 or 4mm bend radius of the Pwll hanger plates there. So for the 3 Maillons that came from Pwll Dwfn, sent in by Tarquin then, the first one, and that had a wear groove, so it had 5.19mm of metal left at the bearing point. That broke at 23.6 kilonewtons. Sample number 2 that had about 4.97 of metal left, that broke at 25.72 kilonewtons. And the worst of the samples, number 3, which only had 4.05mm of metal left, broke at 22.3 kilonewtons. So the reference sample without the notch broke at 25.8, and the notched ones broke respectively at 23.6, 25.7 and 22.3 kilonewtons. So actually not a big difference so far. One of them was only a fraction below the reference sample there, so it does appear that the notches weren't deep enough to make a significant difference over the reference sample in this test. However, there will be a critical point where enough metal has worn away on those Maillons kind of waggling around on those hanger plates for the strength to nosedive off a cliff. So I think we may have just seen that point coming on sample 3 there, dropped a couple of kilonewtons versus the better sample, but then after that, who knows. So yeah, don't go and hang on stuff like that. I mean, keep swapping it out, keep sending it in to me to break, because it's good to see what this stuff can actually do. Yeah, my takeaway from this is that Maillons are super strong, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be flippant and use ones that clearly should have been retired or gone in the bin a long time ago. But also, Pwll hanger plates, they're the real heroes. That thing is still going strong after a whole bunch testing, on and off camera testing. So yeah, great. Not had to spend a fortune on new hanger plates for every test, which is good. Cool. Okay, so if you come across anything out there in the wild, or you're looking through your stash of personal gear and you think, I wonder what that's going to break at, get in touch. Thank you for watching.